You're listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by a machinist. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Protein Machining, and this week I am joined by Tom O'Brien of National Geographic. And so, Tom, kind of take it away. Let people know what you do, where you do it, and you are definitely kind of a unusual guest for the podcast, but one that I'm really excited to get to talk to.
Yeah, so hi everyone out there. I've listened to some of these episodes and I feel like a fraud coming on here, so this will be really fun. So, I am the photo engineer for National Geographic Partners. That's the for-profit side of the Nat Geo ecosystem. Most people don't know, but we have a nonprofit arm, the original, that was founded in 1888, and then the for-profit, that's all the for-profit assets that rolled out in 2015, was owned by Fox and now by the Goliath that is Walt Disney Company.
Oh,
So
wow.
you could say I'm a Mouseketeer. Mickey Mouse is pointing towards the sky on the top of my pay stub. That is a true fact and is weird. We're part of the largest media corporation on Earth now, which is scary and interesting and exciting.
That's crazy, though. I had no idea that Disney owned Nat Geo.
Not all of Nat Geo. They own 70 something percent, and the
Okay.
society owns 27%. That's why the term is partners, Nat Geo partners. So we're all
Oh,
at the same campus still, which is in Washington, D.C., about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, about 4 blocks from the White House, if I'm counting properly, on
oh, wow.
16th Street. Every morning when I drive my car down 16th from Maryland to DC, right before I get to the office, I crest a small hill and I can see the White House every day.
That's pretty cool.
So it leads to a lot of people thinking that we're a government agency, which we are absolutely not. We have no affiliation with the U.S. government at all. People are like, "Oh, you guys are like the government, right?" I'm like, "Nope, nope, not at all. Couldn't be more wrong." So we are closely aligned with our nonprofit friends. They control the brand technically, like they own the copyright for our golden rectangle and the color, and so it does keep our focus narrow, which is good. As the photo engineer, I design and build all of our custom camera equipment and photographic systems for our photographers and explorers and visual storytellers, as well as supply them with all of their stock equipment as needed, technical resources. I'm a consultant for them, procurement, whatever else comes up, because there's only so many technical folks at the company, and every day is different and weird.
That's great. Yeah, I was going back to your Instagram. Oh, actually, speaking of which, where can people find you on Instagram if they want
Yes.
to go see where
Sure.
you are?
So it is simply, you can look up Tom O'Brien. That's Obrien. It should come right up. Or at Mechanical Photo. That's one word, obviously, because it's a hashtag. So Mechanical Photo. I'm not on Twitter. I think that whole platform needs to die. Sorry, everyone out there. I know plenty of people that use Twitter still, but it is mostly stuck in the policy and news space now.
Yeah.
And I think most social media, including Instagram, is caustic, and that's coming from someone that works for the company with the single largest Instagram of any brand on the planet. Go team. Our at Nat Geo, was originally started really by the photo department, which is what I'm part of, the visuals. Jeez, what are we at now? We're well over 100. I think when we came from Bieber, I don't think we'll get to The Rock, but that's an interesting story. We'll get back to that. The Rock does have a place to play in our machine shop.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, sort of. You'll see. We'll explain soon enough. We have 190
190.
million. Yep, 190.
Wow.
So we're in the top 10 quite a bit, and combined all of our social media platforms, we are the single largest social media entity on the planet,
That's crazy.
outside of Facebook's main account. You
Right.
know, so yeah, we have a lot. It's funny, when we first joined Disney, we were one of our executives at a big meeting put up on a board that said our total social media and then all the other parts of Disney, and we'd just destroy them. It's like their social media presence doesn't exist. That includes ABC News, all of Walt Disney, all of 21st Century Fox, all of ESPN, all of the social media accounts you can imagine, wrapped into one. Doesn't even touch ours.
Wow. That's
It is.
insane.
It is actually kind of unfathomable. All our platforms have huge followings, except for TikTok. But then again, how do you really understand TikTok?
Right.
I don't understand TikTok.
Yeah, I'm not sure I do either. But yeah, going back to what
Anyway, sorry.
I pushed you down this rabbit hole, but I was watching some video of you carting around 360 pounds of equipment, back from photographers for Nat Geo or something
That
like
sounds
that.
like a normal day.
Yeah, so that's great. So how much, I guess, of your job is making stuff for photographers versus dealing with equipment, buying equipment, all that stuff?
Not enough of my time is spent building and designing, and they're trying to change it. I just got someone underneath me recently on contract, but my time is spent often too much doing administrative work, procurement, management of equipment, shipping equipment, logistics. God, international logistics. For anyone out there that has to deal with it, it is a nightmare. If you don't have to deal with it, don't go near it. Keep it work domestically if you can. We had equipment recently shipped to Gabon. It was stuck there, just got released about 5 days ago, and it was stuck there for a week and a half. 1,100 pounds of custom equipment.
Oh, jeez.
Yep. Photographer was sitting on his hands basically in Gabon, just like, when do I get my equipment?
Wow.
And he was upset because his fingernails are growing too long, and he forgot his nail clippers. And I had included Leathermans in the package that I got from Leatherman. And he's like, those have scissors, right? I'm like, oh, yeah, they have fantastic scissors. You'll be set, and files, but not until it clears customs.
Oh, jeez.
So that was like honestly, he got it late night. He's like, where are the Leathermans? I need to cut my nails. Gabon time was probably like 11 at night when it got to camp. And he's like, I
Oh my
need to cut
goodness.
my nails.
So
Anyways,
then I guess how did you get here? How does one
sure.
become a photo engineer?
That is the most biggest question I get on Instagram. How do I, or how did you become a photo engineer? And I say, you don't really. So I'm a mechanical engineer by trade and education. Went to Lehigh University for mechanical engineering. Always wanted to be an engineer my whole life. Not sure why. My parents aren't scientists or engineers. I just grew up. As a kid, I was just like How Things Work books. Modern Marvels was my jam. For anyone out there, like that was, I was born in 1990, so that came out like when I was like 4 or 5, and it's so just a wonderful. But I worked after college. I was supposed to have a couple jobs offers with like defense contractors or with the U.S. Navy designing ships right out of college. And then the defense spending freeze happened in DC, and I was a plumber's assistant for 6 months with a BS in mechanical engineering, digging holes in human waste with a tampon floating past my feet for $11 an hour. But you know what? I got strong. I mean, back then, and I learned how to fix toilets. So like, life skills, right?
Yeah.
After that, I worked in energy auditing. From there, I went and became a project manager and field engineer in facade access and fall protection equipment, which that's a long way of saying I designed, tested, installed, and certified what window washers tie off to and railing systems. So
Oh,
I've been on
interesting.
the like biggest buildings in DC and Baltimore. And Baltimore? That's Baltimore. Man, I just said that weird. It's a Maryland native. And also in Virginia. And so a lot of late nights on roofs using rotary hammers, installing sweet anchoring systems from Hilti called undercuts, which if no one's ever looked those up, they're super freaking awesome. They cost like $90 each for each bolt.
Oh,
But they are,
geez.
yeah, so you drill a clearance hole into your concrete slab and then use another tool into your rotary hammer. It expands a cutting head around a mandrel that expands open. It's got carbide teeth on it and cuts out a mushroom. And then basically you can't pull the mushroom back out of the concrete. And like I think the the 3/8 inch bolt had like a 5,000 pound pullout rating in like most standard concrete slabs. So we would use 4 of those per anchor. It's
Jeez.
hilarious the OSHA ratings you have for like anchoring systems and what the human body can actually take. Like if the human body sees 5,000 pounds in any way, you just kind of liquefy. So it was kind of hilarious. Like, yeah, I can drop my Subaru off the building and it'll be fine. Human body, not so much. Anchor,
Right.
just fine. So after that, I worked for the U.S. Army, working at the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute for Infectious Diseases at Fort Detrick in the Aerobiology Division. So there I designed systems that helped with exposures for testing tier 1 pathogens such as smallpox, anthrax, pestis, Ebola, you name it. Did that
Wow.
for about a year. Didn't really like that work. And then I was trying to find a job, and it came down to a bunch of jobs. One making equipment for intelligence, the big 3-letter agencies and groups, like things that we don't talk about.
Right.
And then Geo. I found this job posting as an associate's degree, and I was like, they can't pay me. They still don't pay me enough. But that's besides the point. But I came down to a really hard to get job or a once in a lifetime job, and I took it and I jumped in. I mean, I liked photography. I taught myself photography in high school, and it was a hobby always for me in college. But I'm not a photographer. I'm not awesome at it. Heck no. That's how I got there. A guy happened to be retiring. I got lucky in some ways.
Wow. And
How
how
do you
long
become
have you had the job now?
5 years and change now?
Okay.
So how do you become a photo engineer? That's a different story. That's called a lot of work because I had 3.5 weeks with a Japanese man who had been there for 37 years. And he did not teach me much, and he left. Because my department in the 90s was 8 or 9 people, and it's really just me right now.
Wow.
So I do a lot of work.
But I mean, your stories are always filled with, I mean, every kind of process, every kind of, equipment out there. It's always something new and cool. And that's kind of what made me want to talk to you is, every time I would look at your stories, I'd be like, oh man, he's, plasma cutting today, or oh, he's welding today, or oh, he's machining, or he's assembling, or, he's
Yep.
buying equipment. It's never, it seems like you never have a dull day, or at least I guess if you're not doing admin work.
Yeah, it's never dull. There's always a challenge almost every day of the week, and there's never not work there, which is a sad thing. But
But a good thing. Job security is always a good
oh
thing.
yeah, oh yeah.
Well, cool. I mean, we've got some great questions. TMC Makes asked, what are you amazed is not available on the retail market for photography yet?
What am I amazed that doesn't exist yet? Oh, so that's the interesting thing is that the job photo engineering has been done at the Geographic for I call them ancestors because these people so long ago. Like I would reckon closing in on 100 years, someone's been doing what I've been doing there. I don't know exactly how long back it goes, but it's generations. So there was no B&HPhotoVideo.com, and for those that don't know, that's a big U.S. based retailer of camera and photographic video equipment. There was no just Amazon.com, So 50, 60 years ago, there was very little custom equipment, or there's so much now in the market, right? So I'm never okay. Let's see. What am I amazed? It's not on the market. Okay, I'll tell you. This is super niche, everybody. But for those out there that are camera inclined, there are double grip cameras on the market. Double grip cameras like the ones you see at sporting events where they're like a really big looking camera on a big lens. And those have a longer battery. They're usually three 18650 cells inside, starting at a starting voltage of about 10.5 volts. They probably peak around 13 volts once charged. So for almost every other battery on the market for cameras, they're usually 7.4 native lithium cobalt mixtures. You can buy USB based chargers for all of them, right? So like they're super cheap. The manufacturers would say don't use them, but they work just fine. And those are great for when you're sending people internationally. You just like, hey, here, take this. You can plug into any power bank you can find, any 5-volt DC source. We got you, right? And even just DC to DC charging, right? I would take even that because as everyone knows out there, when you go back and forth from DC to AC, AC to DC, we have losses involved. And a
Right.
lot of times people are remote. No one in the world makes a DC charger for batteries for Nikon or Canon double grip camera batteries.
Really?
Period. No one. I have looked, I have begged, I have pleaded to the camera companies. I'd say, you make me a charger, I'll buy it for $600 to $1,000. I'm serious. Just even if it was 12 volts, I was like, fine, I will run it off a car battery or a solar panel system, something. But it does not exist. And the chargers are, I kid you not, well, we're talking here on a video call, but everyone out there, imagine there's somewhere between your cell phone and an N64. I don't know why those two things came to my head, but and that's a big range, but they're not small, to put it lightly. They're because they fit two batteries at a time. So like you have these huge bricks with you have to haul around. You're like, this is stupid. So that's the thing. That's what I
Huh.
want badly. And for years I've told camera companies, I will pay you lots of money. And these are the most professional cameras in the market. So you would think you would have all of the accessories that any professional might need, right? No.
Well, and especially if Nat Geo comes calling, you would think like
But you would
they
think we have less buying power than you think because numbers are buying power. And the camera industry is smaller than most people think these days. You can thank cell phones for that.
that's fair. Yeah. It is quite amazing what you can do with a cell phone camera.
Yeah, they're still terrible though. That's my opinion. But
That
what do I
yeah.
know?
Yeah, what is the guy working at National Geographic
Yeah,
now?
well, you can do. And here's the thing: is any camera is a great camera. Everyone thinks that cameras make photos better. It's true and not true. 90% of your photography is your composition,
Right.
and that's why I'm a bad photographer. I am not. But the big thing I always tell people, and then we'll get back to machining and fun stuff like that is No one shoots with intent on a cell phone. No one says, you know what, I'm going to go walk outside into that park and take some nice photos on my cell phone. Said no one. Like ever.
Right.
Yeah, like if you say you do that, I call BS on that. No. Because that same phone will ping you with emails and YouTube alerts and stuff, and you'll never, it's
Right.
not the same. So.
Well, I've even heard the same said about film to digital. Like I watch quite a bit of photography on YouTube, and like they say that because you have limited shots, you
Oh
are
yeah.
much more intentional with your composition. And like, is this really worth taking a picture of?
Yes,
So
and I still shoot film for fun on trips. Like no one at Nat Geo shoots 35 millimeter film for any professional work. Sometimes medium format, right? But I shoot 35 film because it's on vacations, like alongside digital, because it is fun and it is similar. You think, you know what? No, not that one. No, not that. But maybe
yeah,
that.
right, yeah, I totally understand that. Like I have friends who shoot digital photography, and like I had one just come back from Iceland, and I think he said he took like 5,500 pictures
Oh
and was
yeah.
happy with like 20. I
Oh
think.
yeah. I mean, I will say this. I had a photographer, Ronan Donovan. There's a series on Hulu you can watch called Kingdom of the White Wolf. It's about Arctic white wolves up in Ellesmere Island in Canada, in Nunavut. And he was there for 3 months. And I know the photo editor told me that he shot about 130K.
Jeez.
Wildlife photography makes a ton of photos. Like I do not envy our photo editors that have to sort through all the photos to find them, because that's photo editing is like project management, and you find the photos and then you like put it together as a story. And I'm just like, oh no, and you have to look
Yeah.
through. Oh god, 130.
Well,
Anyways,
especially, I mean, all of the action shots that you guys are getting, like, because you're just, I mean, they're holding down the shutter.
yeah, it's
Like,
bad these days. And now there's cameras like the Sony A1 that shoots 30 frames per second at 50 megapixels, and it's just like your computer's just crying tears like while it burns up in a pile of smoke.
so back to the questions. TMC
Yeah.
Makes also asked, what's the best bodge or bubblegum and safety wire solution story?
So we don't use bubble gum. We don't use safety wire. We don't use, I don't know, whatever bodge is. I don't know what that means. But, we use this in my land. We use zip ties, gaff tape. And for those that don't know what gaff tape is, just go buy some. GAFF. It's like duct tape, but kicks it in the face. Like it, it's not as sticky, but it won't leave that nasty goo residue on everything. So you can tear it back off the ground, tear it into tiny pieces. A lot of them you can even put on your skin. It's skin safe. Keep a roll of it in your car. They sell it in tiny rolls. That stuff is the best. So like seriously, so those that don't know gaff tape, it will change your existence. But
Painter's tape and duct tape had a baby kind of thing.
yeah, and it's fantastic. It is not cheap though. It's like often like $17 for a 2-inch wide roll. It's not cheap, but so we use a lot of that 3M based hot glue systems, epoxies from 3M. Oh, I love a good 3M epoxy, right? And then my all-time favorite pro thing to use is stainless steel band clamps. They're the best in the world. Just connect things. But the best janky solution. Let's see. Okay, here's a good one. So for those that don't know what a 360 camera is, it's a camera with a bunch of lenses on the outside and it takes imagery around the world in video or stills. So the 360 camera has lenses on all sides. And there's a specific brand of camera we were using on this big shoot in the Okavango Delta in Botswana in Africa. It's a great thing. If you have a VR headset, go look it up. It's into the Okavango. It's super awesome. Like, and I'm not just plugging Nat Geo. You look around, and there's like an elephant walking right next to your face, and then like a line boops the camera, and it's freaking awesome. Like, it's super cool. I wasn't out there, but so the annoying thing about this camera was the only way to stop it outside of like pressing the unit itself was like a Bluetooth remote that was like half the size of my thumb, like the tiniest piece of jank terribleness. And so I was like, I couldn't cut into the camera because we didn't own the cameras; they were on loan from a company. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna cut into this thing. So what I did was I cut into the Bluetooth remote. I soldered to the two parts of the button, ran that to a relay that I could trigger with PWM or pulse width modulation signals from an RC controller to just literally press the button, put all of that junk and some like AA batteries in a tiny Pelican case, like the little clamshell ones, next, and had them put it right under the camera, and then just like, here's a crappy RC controller that works at like, I don't know, like 500 meters. Get out of my hair. And I did that in like, I did like 2 of those for them in like 5 hours once I had all the parts. Because it's just like, I don't care. It probably won't work anyways. It's Africa. And that's not showing shade on Africa, but like when it's hot and wet, everything breaks.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, like, it's just awful.
Every battle plan, fails when you encounter the enemy, kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, totally. So that's one of many super janky things. Yeah.
What about last minute things? Like, do you have to last minute fix things that you've sent out very often?
You mean like before they get sent out, or before they
So
come back?
do you have, because you still have shoots that are in the States. Do you ever have to like have them overnight stuff back to you to fix it and then have to send it back into the field?
Normally
or
I have to, because these days the amount of time we have budgeted for field time and those budgets is reduced. So what that leads to is me teaching people that know nothing about electronics or engineering how to fix stuff in the field. I once explained to a Frenchman, who will not be named, lovely gentleman, and his brother was holding the camera before he went to Afghanistan and Pakistan, right? How to use a multimeter and like what AC versus DC was, just to like beep things out to test voltages, right? For like a custom cable I built them. Like, they were drunk on wine. And I was like, because it was like him and his brother, and like they were hanging out with family before he was leaving on this big trip to some dangerous territories. And I was like, great, like, okay, AC does this, yeah,
right.
it's
AC's the wave, DC's the flat line.
No, we don't explain that to them. We don't even go there. We say AC comes out the wall, shocky, bad. DC is in all the electronics. Okay. Go to the flat line with the V, and then go to the beepy one with the ohm sign. Oh, they don't know what ohm looks like.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I once had a photographer try to convince me that some countries use DC power, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, there might be DC high voltage systems used in some countries for transmission lines, but every single house in the world has AC power, just different voltages. And they were like, no, it's DC. And I'm like, no, not true.
Yeah, we solved this like 100 years ago. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I only learned about high voltage DC transmission systems recently, and I was like, that's a thing. And apparently it is in a lot of countries. Who knew?
I would not have guessed either. Yeah.
Yeah. Singapore is building an underwater high voltage DC all the way to the outback of Australia for solar power.
What?
I know. I saw it on a YouTube video a couple of weeks ago. It's totally true, though. It's really happening.
That's bizarre.
Yeah, it's because, and I'm like, wow. And I guess you have like less line losses, and the synchronization is less of an issue. It's just that your line and equipment cost a lot. That's why we don't do it in the States, or haven't thus far, or something like that. I don't understand it all. Science.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thankfully we also have the space where we can just set up solar. Don't have to go to another country to set it up.
Right. Or Singapore.
Yeah.
Anyways, more questions. Hit me.
Yes. Molly Knows says he's been a fan of yours for years. Can you ask him about the 3D printers that you have at Nat Geo, and then also about the screwdriver set you were gifted?
Okay. I don't know the screwdriver set, what he's talking about. Like, my buddy Paul once gave me a screwdriver set, but that's not what we're talking about. I think he's talking about when my predecessor, Kenji Yamaguchi, I had 3 weeks with him, like I said, right? He was training me on some camera stuff, and I was using this one little screwdriver with an amazing orange handle on it, like just a small precision screwdriver. And I was like, oh, Kenji, this is a really great screwdriver. You guys get it. And most people don't get it when you say that, like, have an affection for a tool, but I know you guys get it out there. And he's like, oh, yeah, this is direct from a Nikon factory. This is real tool. And I was like, oh, that's great. I'm like, he's like, yes, it's my favorite screwdriver. I was like, oh, I'm sure you'll take this back with you to Japan, because he's since moved back to Japan with his wife. And he said, yes. And I said, oh, of course, whatever. Moved on with my day. And then the last day I was like, oh, Kenji, your screwdriver. And he's like, no, you'll keep.
Oh,
and I was
awesome.
like, oh my God, this is so cool. And it still is my favorite screwdriver for like working on cameras and lenses and such. It's just has a great weight to it, great vintage feel. It's good. But 3D printers. All right. We have SLA Form 2 printer. That's a resin printer for those that don't know. Another junky resin printer. We have a old but a reliable Stratasys U-Print, which is an FDM printer. Prints in ABS, and that is all. But it never fails. And then we have a new one, some Chinese firm. It's just another FDM printer. It has 2 dual nozzles. It's pretty good. And and then some terrible one I will not mention. I
Oh,
don't want to
really?
throw the. I convinced society to buy it. I was like, this will be a great FDM printer for giant prints. $10,000 later, it's a piece of trash.
Oh no.
Yeah,
Oof.
yeah, and it's American made, so I'm just kind of ashamed by it. I know, right? But speaking of printers, there's one I got my eye on. Some of you out there may have heard of Mark Forged,
Mhm.
and that stuff. I'm looking actually at the Mark II from them, which is, and for those that don't know, that is the FDM printer. But the outside is a chopped carbon fiber filament, and the inside is reinforced with continuous nylon filaments, and that leads to super strong parts. I mean, our dream.
Actually, I've
Yeah, go
had
ahead.
two guests who had Mark Forged, and they both love them.
Yeah, no, I assume not the metal ones, but the filament ones, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, they
yeah.
like to. Okay, cool.
One of my guests, Danny Rudolph, he uses it all the time. He said, it is expensive, but
Sure.
he can just hit go and it just prints and it comes out perfect every time and it's dimensionally accurate and it's just that's what you want from a printer. And it actually I kind of compared the Form 2 to that as well because like I have a Form 2 at work and I just hit go. I don't think I've ever had a failure on the Form 2.
Right, but the difference between the Form 2 and this is you'll never make a Form 2 part that can actually take a beating ever.
Oh no. Even
No,
their
and
tough resin is not,
right, right.
you
And
know.
that's what I print in there. And but versus the Mark Forges is like I some other guys that do similar work like I do in Germany. They use it to make like this custom fixturing to mount a camera to a bobsled for a German bobsled team to put cameras on it. And the parts looked fantastic. The finish was amazing, and I was like, I mean, that has to be strong to handle the vibrations and to hold a heavy camera on it and the
Oh
ball
yeah.
head and everything. And I was like, okay, that's cool because that's a force multiplier, right? You can
Oh
design
yeah.
the part, print. Okay, so it takes 24 hours. Who cares? Come back the next day, right? And your
Yeah.
part's done. So we have a lot. So I got my eye on that. I mean, the dream would be to have like, oh my god, an SLS printer where you can print like an alumide mixture and just be like, cool, here's my perfect material, just done, presto. I mean, but I
Yeah.
don't have a spare hot 200 in my pocket, right?
Right. Well, even the Fuse One from Form Labs, like having nylon, that stuff's seriously strong
Right,
and
but I wouldn't
would
buy
be
that.
great.
I wouldn't even buy if my opinion on like the specialty sciences is don't buy from the small companies. No hating on Form Labs, but buy from the big company. You'll be happy you did.
Oh yeah. Well, especially if you've got the budget for it, like
Yeah.
that. It's there's a reason they've been around for so long.
The service, the knowledge. It's like this Stratasys U print. It's not an expensive printer, right? And this thing's like a decade old and it's run itself into the ground. Sounds terrible still, but like, and it has 3 print settings, like good, bad, better, right? And it uses tons of support and it takes forever. And it has like proprietary print cartridges, proprietary trays you have to buy, but it like almost never fails. You can stick a part into it in upside down. It should never print like that, and it comes out fine, and it just works. It just works. Like I think there's been maybe like 20 failed prints on it out of thousands and thousands. Like, and I'm talking over, and that's not even my prints. Like just like tons of people. They're like everyone's like, no, it never fails. That's why we use it.
Right. Yeah, that's really nice. Let's see. Tom at Inspiration Metalworks asked, "What are the typical challenges of building a rig for Nat Geo? Weight, strength, water damage."
So all of the above. Weight's always a huge one. A lot of times, especially when we build camera traps. Often, with the exception of this recent project for Gabon, people usually have to hike. So it's body mass limited, or maybe you've got some porters with you to help carry. But I mean, weight's a huge thing with the human body. I mean, you can't just say, "All right, here, man, have like 200 pounds." Yeah, that's not going to happen, right? Not unless you have the Hulk. So weight's a big one. Strength is less of a big one unless you're working underwater or with elephants, as I did in a recent project. And then water. Oh my god, I hate water. And bugs.
Really?
Bugs get into all my stuff, man. In the tropics, the ants will eat it through the Gore-Tex membranes of pelican cases, like the little vents on them, and say,
What?
"Oh, cool, man, I'm going to get in there and eat all your junk because I feel like ruining your day." I have a lot of stuff come back with like dead spiders in them, and I'm like, cool.
Ooh.
Yeah, I know, right? But
I'm
like
sure Customs is super happy with you
Africa
guys.
spiders, I've had people put my camera traps in like dead muskox carcasses. Really happened. Made some cool photos, but I was like, you could have told me that you were doing that before I opened the cases and unpacked everything with bare hands.
So let's walk through, I guess, what a rig build happens. I mean, we can use your most recent one if you could talk
Yeah,
about it.
I
Because
can talk about it.
great, because yeah, you were posting a bunch of parts that a friend locally even made for you. Fine
Yeah,
arc. You were welding, you were cutting, you were gluing, you were assembling, you were doing everything under the sun. So how does that
sure.
start? How does it come to you? How does the project get described to you? What's the back and forth with the photographer or the project lead look like? And then how does it get fleshed out and then shipped out?
So every project is different. Projects are big, projects are small. So the project lead, there is none. It's me, sometimes the photo editor. So the photo editors help select and pick the photographers for our assignments. And their role is to build assignments. So I'm not getting my orders from them, really, if that makes sense. No one really tells me what to do. It's weird. But what I often starts is a photo editor or photographer comes to me and say, "Hey, Tom, we've got this idea. Do you think we could do X?" And or they know I can do X, and so they just say, "Hey, would it be possible for us to do 15 of this type of camera trap or of this type of thingy majang by this date for so and so for this place?" Insert. And then sometimes it says a photographer comes to me and says, "Hey, I've got this idea. The problem, I want to take a photo like this. How do we do this?" Or maybe it's a half fleshed idea and they're like, "I think I need infrared lights because it's high." Like right now I'm digging into like hyenas at night and like we're trying to do infrared stuff. We'll get back to that later, but I help select the equipment and I build some things. So for elephants, a story is actually on fruiting trees. You will be able to read about it in an issue that comes out this coming spring, I think it is. Can't share anything else about that, lest I be smacked on the hands. But elephants are being affected by climate change poorly, very badly. It's really sad, actually. And you can see, I've already seen some pictures, and you can see them visibly skinnier. It's actually really sad.
Oh wow.
Because for those that don't know, elephants are super, super smart. Like, they are wicked smart animals with really complex social dynamics, led by a matriarch. And they're really emotive, and they have care for their young. They're very like us in different ways. They have feelings and long-term memories. If any of you out there ever think about hunting an elephant, I will find you. That is a threat. Anyways, we like animals at Nat Geo. Enough said. But so they come to me and say, "Hey, we think here that these forest elephants are rather aggressive towards human things. We know that the researchers have a lot of trail cameras. For those that don't know what a trail camera is, it's just like the little hunting cameras you might see. They're like the size of a Game Boy, maybe bigger, right? They've got a sensor, maybe a flash, and a thing. And these have flashes, the ones they're using. And the elephants, yes, don't like the flashes. About 1 in 4 of those get tusked, chewed on, or stomped to death. So elephant-resistant camera traps were born. Well, at first I was like, elephant-proof. Yeah, and until I visited the lead elephant curator at the National Smithsonian Zoo in Washington, D.C., and through one of my fiance's contacts, she's a conservationist, and I went there, and then I met some amazing elephants. They were very cute. And I was like, yep. I saw how big everything was around me, and I was like, he showed me some things that their bull, I can't remember the bull's name, had like pierced with his tusk, and I was like, okay, so resistant. Because if we make an elephant proof, he will not be able to move it even off the pallet with his bare hands. You know? So that's how it got started. I don't know if that answers the question.
So they came to you and just said, "We want to take pictures. We're having trouble getting the pictures we need."
Well, it was more like we know we're going to have the trouble, right?
Okay.
We're expecting trouble. Like, we're going to do camera trapping. It's a big part of this story. And for those that don't know what a camera trap is, because a lot of people don't, it's like a trail camera, but it's a professional camera, mirrorless or mirrored, inside of a housing that is usually weather tight. And then we have a sensor, usually an infrared beam break, like a laser trap beam, or it's a passive, like the ones that set off the lights when you go into a room at an office, etc. And that sets off the camera, which then sets off wirelessly or wired a bunch of strobes, which are also in their own weatherproof enclosures. And normally that's quite lightweight, all things considered. Maybe 50 pounds total for the trap, including mounting hardware. Not so with this one. And originally I thought they just were going to attack the when I first started this project, I was like, it'll just be the housings, and you want five or six of these, right, man? And he's like, yeah. I was like, all right, this shouldn't be that bad. And then I learned it was the strobes that the elephants don't like, and I was like, oh. And at that point, we had already committed to 5 traps, each with 5 strobes, leading to 25 strobes. that I had to make really elephant resistant. Like,
Right.
really elephant resistant. Like, if they go at it, think I learned from this curator, I was like, okay, so, like, even a forest elephant could weigh 12,000 pounds, and they can apply that all to 1 foot, and they can apply thousands of pounds onto the tip of their trunk tusks if they want to. Here's the thing at the end of the day, elephants can tear down the trees with ease if they want to. Like, they literally will do that sometimes to eat roots. Like, that's a thing they do. That's good. That's fine for nature. It helps to keep the natural order. And yeah, don't mess with Ellies. They will mess your day up.
Apparently.
My
So then
yeah.
what's your what was your thought process on like how to make these resistant and still able to be mounted in trees?
So I started with the strobes, and so I was using a specific brand of camera trap equipment. Usually I build it all bespoke in house. The traps, the hardware is the strobing equipment. But this time I wanted to use a specific brand for better or for worse. We'll see how that plays out. And the strobes are wireless, all enclosed, and they're already weatherproof, kind of durable seeming on their own. But they're this weird box, kind of cubish like shape. And so like normally my strobes can fold flat, and I can just find like a tube to stick things in with an acrylic or polycarbonate front. So I was like, oh my god, how am I going to armor this thing? And then also, it's wireless, so I can't just cover it in steel, right? Because radio frequencies. And oh my god, it was awful. It ended up using a 6-inch air duct pipe coupling. I found a McMaster car. I know you all out there love McMaster car. It is our holy grail and Bible. Best thing in the world. Love those
Oh
people.
yes. I'm sitting next to McMaster boxes right now. So I
There's got to be at least. I'm in my home office, but there's got to be a McMaster receipt somewhere in here. So I found that. And I was like, cool, it fits in there perfectly. And then I was like, got to make it strong now. How to do this? Okay. I'll slip aluminum or steel 6-inch pipe segments because it slips right in there, right? Because it's 6-inch pipe coupling. Remember, everyone? And then I slipped that in there. Okay, cool. Well, but the whole thing needs to be able to come back out, right? So that we can change the battery, which is on the front face, but on the back faces are controls problems. So in the front face, I fine cut LLC after someone else did not complete the job well for us. We have the 0.75 inch thick 606 aluminum face with a holes cut out, and then that mounts in the front with radial screws and epoxy, and then 3/8 inch impact resistant polycarbonate goes on the front of that, bolted in place. The whole thing got drill tapped. So each one had 8 holes in the front tap. All that got manually tapped in house with power drills and stuff like that. Because I'm noobs. Like, I don't have all your fancy toys, guys, out there. We'll get to what toys I have. And then on the back we have worst part of the project, plumbing cap, like, Fernco caps. Everyone knows what those are. They're like the rubber caps with a steel band clamp, and you close it off. And then I put a fiberglass disc inside of that was held in place with bolts, just to give it some rigidity.
Mhm.
And I was like, cool, I found one of these things online. That should be fine, easy. Did plumbing. These are easy to find. False. Always check that the part is not the rarest thing in the planet, which is what I picked.
Oh really?
I picked a 7-inch pipe cap, which apparently is used for very specific types of municipal work, which is only made by the company Fernco. And they run back order because everything's on back order these days, as everyone knows, because supply chain issues, yada, yada. I ordered 4 from somewhere in Georgia, 4 from somewhere in North Carolina, 4 from Anchorage, Alaska, from a trailer out. No, Fairbanks. Sorry, not Anchorage. Fairbanks, Alaska. Kid you not. And then 12 from Nevada. I spent countless hours tracking those down and talking to people that were like, wait, what you using my pipe cup for? I was like, elephant resistant camera traps. And they're like, that is weird. And I'm like, I know.
I know.
Do you have any more? I really need them. Please. And we even tried to find them in the Netherlands where the photographer was. We tried everything. It was awful.
Oh my goodness.
Don't ever do that, people. Make sure that there's many in stock of the thing you want, or you will be ruined.
What did the flashes end up weighing?
With everything, each one. Oh, and then, sorry, there's a steel ring on the outside where it had flats on it. This was all also cut by a fine cut. And then I just welded on with weld nuts, a 3/8/16 and 1/4 20, and also had a lift point. So with all that on there, 11 pounds.
Wow,
Which
that's not too bad at all.
Well, yeah, but except you have to carry that in the jungle, right? So we have 11 times 25. That's 275 pounds of
Of
just
flash.
that. And that's just with each one having one battery. Remember, we need another 25 batteries because you got to be able to swap them.
Right. And then there's the cameras too.
Oh yeah, and the camera housings. So the camera housings are a little more simple. I'll keep it quicker. So they're like a Pelican case that's modified. That's the off the shelf. Then that gets modified a little bit on the inside, the outside. That went into the way I did this was I took steel electrical enclosures that are washdown enclosures off Big Master, and I
Hmm.
mounted in them with spacer blocks that I machined and mounting plates in the bottom. And then on the front, I had the half-inch polycarbonate like fixing rings, like a ring. This is like a face with 4 bolts that would basically be like. And there was cap nuts on the inside that I welded on the inside, and that held in place 3/8 inch pressure rated borosilicate glass, which is very optically clear and very scratch resistant. And
Right.
then there was custom things and then I used amazing. I bought myself some chassis punches, beautiful chassis punches to cut the holes in the. If anyone's tried to hold a box down to a mill, it's not really fun. You know, just kind of wants to move around on you,
Right.
and that's what I did for that. And then that's pretty much it for those. Put some handles on them with some bolts, painted them up. That's the short and the long of those. And
That's
then
great.
the mounting hardware was basically erector sets, like the stuff people use for signposts,
Hmm.
right? They're like box tube steel with holes perforated through it. Used a bunch of that, welded up a bunch of janky plates that could be ratchet strapped to the trees. Oh, that's the other thing I should mention. Normally we use like lag bolts and all sorts of stuff like that and just screw things into trees, and that's the easy thing. Yeah, no problem, right? False. It's a tree reserve. You can't drill into the trees. So everything was ratchet strapped. We shipped like 45 different ratchet straps to Gabon. I mean, we sent ones that were like the ones you see on big rigs that are rated for like 3,000 pounds. Just like everything was ratchet straps and heavy hardware.
Oh my goodness. So how did the constraints for that project come to you? Like, did you anticipate these lag bolts the whole time, and then last second they were like, "Oh, by the
No,
way, you got to
I knew
ratchet."
about that from the beginning. I knew it
Okay.
was going to be a stupid ratchet strap party from the beginning. I just didn't know how stupid it would get. Until you're sitting with like a mountain of ratchet straps in front of you, you're not like you don't realize how bad it is really.
Right. Yeah.
And you're like,
Totally.
that's just so many ratchet straps. Like, what am I? How?
Well, I'm definitely glad that Clayton over at Fine Art could take care of you
Oh
guys
my god,
because.
he did baller work. And the thing he did the best as I designed up, and I was planning to make it in house, and I just have it tab and slot and then weld it up. Was these just really beefy pan tilt heads for the camera trap boxes because the trap boxes ended up being about 35 pounds each, which is that's a lot of weight to lift up into a tree.
And
And
ratchet strap into the tree.
yeah, I made a process for them to do it not too awful, but yeah, and it came down to I printed on the form too, and I was like, all right, it all fits, it's good. It's really nice pivot assembly out of 1/4 inch stainless, and like yes, it could have been milled out of aluminum. Everybody, of course it could. Was our CNC mill down at the time? Yes, we were getting a new Tormach, and no time for that. So I paid a fancy sum to Fine Cut to do a baller job welding that up, and they are, without a doubt, potentially some of the strongest camera mounts on the planet. I mean, they're just. I used grade 9 like half-inch bolts for the thing, so
That's
it's like,
awesome.
I'm like, yeah, what do you want to do? Like hang 2 cars off of it? It'll probably hold it.
Oh, that's great. So I guess what other? Well, actually, first you mentioned your tools. What
Yes.
is the wide variety of tools
Oh,
you guys have at
let's
your
talk
disposal?
about the tools we have. So, I always like to say when people come and I give tours of the shop, I'm like, welcome to the National Geographic Machine Shop. It's the best machine shop from like the 70s. Like, and the reason I say that is like, you look around and like the average person, they're like, this looks amazing. And I'm like, to me, I'm like, it looks old as dirt. So, like, we've got 2 Bridgeports, which I want to circle back to and query the world because a sad thing happened last week with a Bridgeport, and I want to talk to everyone. So we got 2 Bridgeports, one that's Prototrack modified with the X, Y, and the Z, with the kind of CNC doodads in there. We got 2 hard-hinge precision lathes, a Monarch engine hydraulic engine lathe that is lovely and terrifies me. We had an old Tormach 1000 series. Now we have the Tormach 1000X, the new doodads just got installed recently. Let's see. We've got a beautiful falling bandsaw whose name escapes me. It's over 60 years old. It's made in Minnesota. We've got oh my god, it starts with the B. Just a cold saw that I love my cold saw. I think it's so great. I didn't even know that existed until 4 years ago. I was like, cold saws are fantastic.
Oh yeah,
It's
they're great.
just keep going, just keep
Yep.
cutting. We've got a dual bandsaw that probably weighs like 3 times the weight of my car. It's monstrously long. Like I mean, like it's just so big. Which because there's the hydraulic table too.
Oh,
One of
that's
those big.
great.
Oh, it's they bought the best stuff back in the day because we had so much cash way back. Now we don't, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's the best from back then,
Right.
right? So we have more hand files than God Himself knows what to do with. Because there's some old machinists back in the day who used to say it's for the lean times, and like I'm serious. Like we have every nut and bolt you could imagine in the U.S. system, which is fantastic, and it's all stainless, like at least 18.8. And let's see. Oh my God, I'm missing more tools. Two bridge ports, the Monarch. We have an Amada, and mind you, our machine shop's underground, which is a weird place to put a machine shop because foundations, elevators, right? All that
Right. Yeah.
those constraints. So we have
Getting
an
things
Amada.
down there.
We have a hydraulic Amada sheet metal brake, right? Which, based on some documents from the 80s, it's the highest capacity they could get by breaking it down into chunks to still get it down the freight, right? And this is where I want to introduce Dwayne The Rock Johnson. So if anyone looks at my Instagram, sometimes they'll see a picture of Dwayne looking real great. And it's like him shirtless from the waist up, black and white, holding a football, looking super great. I mean, like, I'm a man, and I can say Dwayne's a good-looking guy, right?
Right.
And I found this picture unframed behind a cabinet once in my shop, and I was like, but why? And I determined it was an Epson printer test file, right? And so I had it framed in acrylic by our in-house framer, and like another engineer had the idea, like, let's put it on the sheet metal brake because it's our heaviest piece of equipment, like 12,000 pounds. So that's
Right.
the
It's your
rock.
rock. Yeah,
That's
I
the
gotcha.
rock. Yeah, and that's the rock. And he's just there looking stoically over the machine shop. And so my dream is to have Dwayne Johnson come in there, grab like a piece of scrap metal, bend it with his muscles right next to it, and me take a picture of that, and then make a cardboard cut out of it and put it just next to him, next to the thing, and that just lives there. It's totally stupid, but I'm just like, he does stuff for Disney now. He was
Yeah.
in Jungle Book, right?
He's good at social media. He would want to capitalize on that.
Come on, Dwayne, let's do it for your tequila brand.
There you go.
We have a lovely Niagara power shear. Love that thing. Oh my God, it's such a beautiful shear. One of the most interesting pieces I have that I barely understand how to use, which is it's a gear drill press. It's Swedish. It's Solberga. I'm not sure if anyone out there. Yeah, it's really weird,
Yeah.
but and so it can
Never
do
heard of it.
tapping and all that stuff. I still need to figure out how to use it. Might have some issues, but it's remarkably quiet. If anyone's used a gear drill press, they're like silent. They're not the big whirring of belt-based ones, and it's just beautiful,
Oh, they do look nice. So just look that up.
right? And like this
Yeah.
one is really old school, all curvilicious, right? And this lovely green looks like it's from like 60s or something. It just everything on it feels good.
That's awesome.
It oozes quality, and I'm like, oh, it's just good, right? And then there's our welding room, which is underground, which is also crazy. So we've got our gas welding system. We used to have a spot welder that was 600 volts at 600 amps. That's gone. I only know that because it's the circuit breaker on the wall. We have our Lind TIG and arc welder, which is 40 amps at 600 volts. It's massive. It probably weighs as much as a Mini Coupe, and it's water cooled by dumping water down the drain. Go Earth. And its on switch is smaller than a household light switch. It means like you turn it on and you never turn it off kind of thing.
It sounds like a bizarre machine.
It's amazing though. It's a great welder. And then we have another like 480 volt air cooled TIG. We have a Miller-Matic MIG, bunch of grinding tools in there, drill grinders, all sorts of stuff. Bought 2 years ago an awesome Hypertherm plasma cutter because I plan to turn that into get a CNC for that at some point and find some space. I think that's it. And then a bunch of associated, shop tools and other things. We have an electronics lab and all that stuff.
Yeah, because you do quite a bit of electronics fabbing as well, right?
Yep, a lot of cable building and diode work, power systems. It's always really sketchy. A lot of hot glue gun. If you don't own a 3M brand hot glue gun, the high temp variant, you can get it on McMaster. Get it. Just do yourself a favor.
All right.
They're good.
All right. So before we jump into shop news and new things, do you have any other rig stories that you want to share? I know that for anybody who hasn't gone and listened to it, you had a great episode of the Nat Geo podcast, Overheard.
Sure.
and you talk about a couple cool ones there. But if there's anything else that you've
So in the Overheard podcast, they focus on the Beaver Cam, and the Beaver Cam hasn't been deployed yet. It is an underwater housing, but that one's not from. I want to talk about things that are going to be more interesting to these viewers here. So more heavy fabrication.
sure,
So I think a
what
really
you got?
interesting project is the Funky Bird Train, or as I call it, hashtag Funky Bird Train. And hashtag Funky Bird Train. Some people that live out west may know a species of bird called the sage grouse, a majestic and weird species of birds. They look like to those that don't know what it looks like, I didn't know what it was originally. It's like a advanced turkey from the dinosaur age, and the males do this weird air. All we can say is air boob, like mating dance thing. It's very odd. And they call lecking. It's a mating dance they do in the plains of Western America, and we were documenting it for a climate change story. And so the photographer had this idea from this old PBS specialist. So I was like, all right, this researcher had made like a taxidermy female sage grouse and put it on model railroad tracks to like do acoustic sampling of the birds. He's like, I want to do that, but with a camera. And I was like, you're crazy, dude. But how long do I have? And he's like, you have like under 3 weeks. And I'm like, I hate your guts. Goodbye. I'm hanging up now. I have to go work. So for 3 weeks, I was Funky Bird Train. And so what we did was I built a fake female sage grouse. He built the paper mache female bird that went on top. But so what it was is a little railroad. The railroad tracks are made out of half-inch PVC pipe, so you could buy that out in Wyoming. And the railroad ties are 3D printed on that trusty Stratasys I talked about, and then just zip screws that go up through it. So we can build that out there. And the chassis is made out of it's all really small, which was the hard part about this project. It was just a small build. I mean, not as small as some of the parts you all make out there, but it was, so we just CNC'd it on the Tormac, but it was just this small little rig powered by 18650s using stepper motors that were controlled over PWM signals through RC controllers. And the whole thing could turn left, right, forward, back, geared over a belt-driven system. And then the camera could tilt up and down. And then the camera controlled over a mesh Wi-Fi system. And so it's just like a crazy little project. And the tricky thing was actually ended up being that the tolerancing was really sloppy. I mean, I'm a terrible machinist, guys. I really am. I hate to be self-deprecating, but I know who I'm talking to here. And so the tolerancing was off enough on the panning table, the slewing part of the slewing table, so it would catch a little bit, right? And so the horizontal movement wasn't great. So when she would turn left and right, it was pretty awful looking. But she would turn. But it was, I mean, funniest weird little thing. I mean, it works. And there's these photos you can look up online of this like text of this like fake, just terrible. I mean, it worked because the birds didn't notice it, right? That was what we wanted. So he sat in a hunting hide, freezing his butt off in the morning in Wyoming, and then it would go like 100 feet out from it on this 100 feet of little railroad track, and he would sit there waiting for the birds to do something remarkably interesting. And these are like just dumb turkey birds, basically, just kind of waddling around, puffing their chests out, making weird noises. Yeah, I mean, that's a weird one. That's a fun one for sure.
And for 3 weeks, like that's a crazy turnaround.
Most of my projects, the elephants, which was the largest project I've ever done, I did majority of the work in 6 weeks.
Well, I know, yeah, because I reached out to you and I was like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And you're like, don't talk to me until after September 18th. And I was like, okay, well, I'll circle back then.
And then I was like, never mind, come back later. We're still not done yet.
Yeah, you're like, I need a couple more weeks. I was like, okay, I understand.
Yeah, it was like 6 days a week, 14 hours a day kind of project.
Oof.
It was stupid.
And then you also made the rig for the climbing video.
Oh, yeah, Free Solo with
yes, thank you.
Produced and directed by Jimmy Chin and Chai. I'm going to butcher her last name. I'm not going to say it. But that was about the climber Alex Honnold, his ascent of El Capitan Free Solo, which, for those who don't know, is a psychopath thing to do where you climb rock walls outside without ropes. And we're not talking bouldering like 20 feet. We're talking like thousands of feet.
Yeah, like a climb that people on ropes don't accomplish when they try it.
Days often when they do it. They're like, oh, it's going to take me like 3 days to ascend El Cap. And that's normal. They like sleep on the wall and everything. No, dude did it in 3 hours. Yeah, and that I did in 2 weeks for $1,300 in secret. And I was on a knee scooter after an ankle surgery.
Really?
It's dead serious. I was rolling around Washington D.C. with like a spotting with like a pair of binoculars, walkie-talkies, RF antennas, all in this like scooter basket. And my friend was like a half mile away from me. People were like, "Is he injured? Does he need help?" Like they're thinking to themselves, "Is he a terrorist?
Right.
What's going on here?" Lots of confusing mixed signals here. He looks like in DC, you look for people with doing weird, sketchy things. Like we're always looking for that. So you're like, "Is it a terrorist?" Or is he disabled? I don't know.
Right. Do I run toward him or do I run away?
we're not sure right now, but something's up. Yeah, no, that was a wacky one.
That's crazy. It's really cool that you get to kind of put your name alongside, these big
Oh, I don't
shoots
get
though.
to.
Like,
My name is never alongside.
well, still you to get to work on that kind of stuff. Like
It
I
is
know when
cool.
I get to work on big projects, even if I'm never on the lips of anybody who's actually in the project, it's cool to be associated
Oh
with
yeah,
that kind
no.
of
And for
stuff.
me, the biggest ones I have the most pride for are working on things that involve conservation and animals because animals are super fun to work with. Like I cannot wait to see an elephant go ham on my equipment. We sent him a bunch of small trail cameras for video to put outside of the scene to hopefully like look at the scene taking video. And I'm just like, come on, do it. Go. Like I've just put in so much effort. I gotta know now as an engineer. Like, does any of it even stand a chance? Is it overbuilt? Is it way underbuilt? And like the craziest thing I did for that was at the last minute in like 3 hours, I took one of the boxes and I built around it a optional Mad Max style like stomp cage, so that if a photographer wants to put a camera at ground level and try to entice the elephant to try to step on the camera, we can do it.
Really?
So all it was is I like took one of these boxes and I basically like welded around it and like just a open-ended cage, and then on the backside is a lock bar. I just took a ton of in the basement. We have a huge steel rack. It's kind of awesome down in one of the parking garages,
Hmm.
and I brought up all sorts of steel and just went insane with the cold saw, just cutting stuff and just tacking it on. I mean, it looks like something. I mean, it really does. Everyone that saw it was like, "That's Mad Max." And then like I didn't
That's
even
awesome.
use like if I like welded something on in the wrong spot, I was like, "Screw it, plasma cut it off." Just brought it to the plasma table and it was like, "Gah." So it's
Wow.
gnarly, it's sharp, it's evil. It just put some brown paint on it, and that happened like 12 hours before it got picked up for shipment. And I just was like, and that day I'd promised my fiance that I'd be home at a reasonable time. I was like, all right, babe, like this is the last day. Tomorrow I'm gonna take it easy. We'll be done by like 6. Be home for dinner. It'd be all cool. And then like tomorrow we ship, and then like I'm cutting out for the rest of the week. Right? It'll be good. I'll be around for you. And she's like, okay, cool. And that was that morning. And then like 2 p.m. that afternoon, I'm like, so I text her. I'm like, I need to like spend about more. Like I won't be home until like 9. I gotta build like an elephant-proof stomp cage. I decided I want to do it. She's like, that's the best excuse I've actually ever heard. That's amazing. I was like, thanks, babe. I love you.
Well, at least she's understanding.
Oh,
That's
she
good.
is. Bless her heart. She's great.
So actually, I was looking through your article on Nat Geo,
Sure.
and you actually made one for a camera that has been in Tucson. The one that went to the aircraft dismantling and repurposing facility.
Oh
That's the
yeah.
Boneyard.
Yeah, the
That's in
boneyard.
Tucson. Yeah.
I forgot the boneyard was in Tucson. But yeah, we didn't. I didn't build anything. It just had some great photos alongside it. So that's why we used it in the article. That's how media is, guys. But what it is fun. You can buy a 30-foot tall carbon fiber camera pod, actually camera mast, and then you can control your camera over Wi-Fi. So I sent it to these crazy Italian guys. They're really awesome. They did the story on like kind of a circular economy. They
Hmm.
were looking at repurposing and recycling, and so they went to the boneyard. And the boneyard is next to an Air Force base,
Yep.
so you're not flying a drone. They tried, and I was like, they're like, could we fly drones? And I was like, guys, don't even ask. Just don't ask. Like, it's not worth your freaking
No,
time. They're
it's
like, well,
not going
what
to
if
happen.
what if we have our Part 107 license from the FAA? I'm like, that will not help.
No.
It's like trying to fly in DC. It will not help. They will find you. They will prosecute you. Don't do it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they stuck. There's a great photo of like the camera of like this pod sticking out of like the top of an old bomber or something like that, and they got some cool photos. Yeah.
Yeah. And the Boneyard's actually it's super amazing. They
Can you
do.
just visit it?
they do like bus tours through it. You can't like walk through it or
Okay.
anything. Actually, I have walked through it though because an old friend in middle school, his brother-in-law that he lived with was a high up in the Air Force there, and so at one
Oh,
point
okay.
he brought us out there and we got to walk around and drive around in a Jeep and just
That's kind of awesome, actually.
it was pretty amazing. I really value the little bit that I got to do there because it is not something that you normally get
No,
to do.
no, I had an internship with the Navy once, and we got to go out to Norfolk Naval Base, and I got to go on some active ships, and like the crewmen were all like, "Oh, you want to like see inside the engine?" Because a lot of our Navy's boats are powered by gas turbines. Actually, most people don't know that. And I was like, all of us engineering college, like PhDs and master students, like we're all like, "Do we?" And we're like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Come on!" And we like crawled into the engine base. We're like, "This is so cool,"
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
like the merchant marine ships had like drive shafts that the size of tree trunks. You're
Jeez.
just like, what? And all the power comes out of that small gas turbine, and they're like, "Yep." And you're like, "Burp, derp, 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 what?" And like, these things are 1,000 foot long boats. You're like, that's insane. So much power.
That's nuts.
Yeah, so it's really cool. That military equipment sometimes is just so fascinating to see.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it as a an engineering person or engineering minded person,
Yeah,
that is like I guess it's like our modern equivalent of like the pyramids or something. It's
sure.
like what can you do with like no limits on design budget and it just needs to get the job done, you know?
A10 Warthog. That's what it
Right.
is.
Exactly.
A10 titanium bathtub.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you want a plane with your gun?
Or a
A10 Warthog.
Right, exactly, exactly. Do you want to maybe go backwards sometimes while flying?
Yeah.
A10 Warthog will
Exactly.
fly. It'll fly home with one wing. It's fine.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. Well, that brings us to shop news and new things. You mentioned you got a new Tormach. What else is going on in your shop? What's
So the
new?
Mark Forge is on my radar. I've also got my I can't remember the name. So if you guys might be familiar with Omax, uh,
Yeah, water jet,
water jet. They have this amazing little water jet.
a mini max or something like that.
Yeah, that's it. So we've got between us and society, we're considering that because like everyone at Nat Geo badly wants a water jet. We're like, we just want it. We just want one so bad. But there's nowhere to put it. Is the real problem. There's nowhere on campus to put one. Like everyone could use. We could cut glass for optical windows, just everything. It's so much like we don't have time. This is the sad thing about my job is I don't have time to learn machining really well, right? Like to be truly good at it. There's never time, and so water jet is a great way to be able to make a lot of parts. So that Omax, we're like kind of starting to think about that one. It's really nice because it's small, compact, portable, moves around.
Oh yeah.
Those are kind of the only things on our radar at the moment. I mean, I'm going to buy a new Metcal soldering iron tomorrow, but it's like
Ooh.
it's only $610. It's not much.
No,
Yeah.
but I'm a big fan of nice soldering
Oh,
irons. I do.
Metcals! Oh my gosh, they're the best. I'm so spoiled. They're amazing. So Metcals have inductive heating in the tip, so there's
Oh
actually
really?
they're radio frequency based.
What?
Yeah, yeah. So like there's no heat being transmitted down the wire. So the wire, the cable back to the unit is super flexible and light, and the tip, the handle is just it's like holding a pencil or like a heavy pen. I mean, so I have kind of shaky hands, and so like the big standard soldering irons are kind of hard for me. And they had those there because they're used for professional rework and stuff. By the people who can really solder. Like there's guys at work at the society that can solder under a scope. To do like the
Right.
tiny stuff. I can't do that, but so I
Oh
was like,
wow.
yeah, they're really nice.
They are super tiny. Yeah.
The Metcals are really nice. Like the MX series, just switch them on and go.
Yeah. I'm looking
And
at
so
one right
the
now. That's
temperature is
amazing.
based on what tip you put in. It's programmed in based on because it's like the Curie effect. So like
Oh
it
wow.
sends the signal back to kind of to this thing and says, all right, they're used a lot in production too. Things like this.
Huh.
But don't
Yeah, I've
expect.
got a decent like Hacko one, but I've
Yeah,
never
heck,
heard
it's
of.
fine.
Yeah, it works. I mean,
But
it
like,
wasn't
I am really
a
interested in
$600
the
one.
GT series that just came out from Metcal. They are multi-temperature, so they might be more up your alley because then you don't have to pick the tip and the temperature
Okay.
because they sell like literally 3,000 different tips.
Oh, I bet if you have to choose a
And,
tip for every
and I'm like, how
temperature.
do I choose to tip? I was doing that today on the phone with like tech service, and the guy was like, just go figure it out. I was like, no, help. I don't know. There's too many.
Like, I need to make things. I don't need to test things. I
I
need to
don't
do it
need
right
to
now.
build like circuitry for rockets, okay? I'm just making some cables to go do some stuffs.
That's
But so
cool.
that's, those are interesting. And the CNC plasma is going to happen this year too. I'd really like that because then if I get that and I get good at using the hydraulic brake, you could just crank out brackets.
Oh yeah.
Between that and a Mark Forge 2, you're like, I'll become the bracket king, which is a lot of what we do is boxes and brackets, unfortunately.
I mean, that makes sense.
Put
You're
thing in
mounting
box
stuff.
to defend from fire, wind, water, underwater, something. Something's trying to break the thing that's fragile and not meant for those elements. Then mount the said thing to something. Boxes and brackets. So even if it's underwater tube, it's boxes and brackets still.
Right.
Like one time I made a selfie stick for a submersible. I did it with aluminum and I welded it up in like 2 hours. It was ghetto. And it was like held by this, like there's a manned submersible with a T handle and it was like using like 1,000 feet. But I was like, I don't have time for this. This isn't really on my pay. Like, no.
Right.
I mean, it went to 1,000 feet though. It's corroded as hell now. It just sits on the floor.
It worked though.
Once, never again.
Right. So, what is your favorite project or picture that has been
Oh,
produced by any of your projects?
favorite picture. I like the Funky Bird train a lot, just because of the story. But my favorite pictures. Oh, you know what? I taught a guy in India how to build his own camera traps after loaning him some, and that was really rewarding for me. And that's really great because that's giving back. That's diversifying our photographer base, teaching people to do their own thing, right? Because we're teaching non-technical people to be self-sufficient. So I taught him how to build his own camera traps for snow leopards, which are, if you don't know what a snow leopard are, Google it because they're super cute. But they live in the most arid and high plains and high mountains of the Himalaya and in India. So and they're very scent based. So if you put a camera trap out, they will not come to it for 2 weeks. They will know you were
Wow.
there. So everything has to survive for a long time. Your battery systems, everything. And I taught him, and like he just took some awesome photos. And he had first time camera trapping, like first time like those first few years doing it.
Right.
And he's not a seasoned professional at it. Now he is, and he just took some awesome photos of these snow leopards. There's a lot of other photos I really like. I built some quick underwater systems for my boss, who's one of our two staff photographers, Mark Thiessen, and we did a piece that ran a couple years ago on human performance. And he was photographing out west. There was I think it was Kentucky. I don't know where this kid was. He was like he was in the Olympics. He was supposed to be like the next Phelps, right? Michael Phelps, and his
Hmm.
like family has like a 2-lane indoor swimming pool attached to the house for training. I'm like, this kid was 18. I'm like, that's an 18-year-old body looks like. What? You look like Superman, dude. And so there was just this photo of his coach, his coach, like yelling kind of towards him from the side of the pool, and his son is doing the butterfly, and the lights are underwater, and they sync up with lights that are above water too, and the camera's above water. So they're scuba strobes, and they all go off together, and you just get this really dramatic photo. And so that was a quick project, but it was, I don't know. I'm just pulling one off the top of my head. Oh, you know what? I have another one. Carnivorous bats in Mexico at a Mayan temple. I did that early in
Oh,
my career. The photographer Anand Varma wanted to document these carnivorous bats in Mexico, and they happened to also be at a Mayan temple. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like Indiana Jones. I don't know what else does. And there's this really cool photo he ended up using some of my equipment to do with like a lidar sensor and some strobes, and I made like just milled up some parts to hold this focusing assembly on a strobe, and it's a bat flying outside of a Mayan temple in the jungles
mhm.
of Mexico. It just looks cool as hell.
That's awesome. That is really, really cool. You mentioned you wanted to talk about Bridgeports and
Oh
something
God, this is
unfortunate.
so okay. Okay, so I'm trying to think how I can talk about this without talking. So this past Friday, I was being filmed, maybe for a show that might go on a streaming service that we might be on. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to be on a thing, right? It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited, right? Just like a part of an episode. But that's all I'm going to say. Nothing else. But I was doing some B-roll for all the guys, and I had set all the cinema cameras, and I had set up like, okay, we'll do a little bit of aluminum facing on this Bridgeport. Cool, cool, cool. That'll be easy. Just nothing. I'm not going to go insane because like I'm not shooting chips on everybody, right? And I had some cutting set up. I had some lathe stuff set up. We also have a ProtoTrack CNC lathe. I forgot about that one too. And we'll do some welding, some fiery plasma cutting that I'll do poorly on purpose so that it looks better. Because if you do plasma cutting poorly, more sparks.
Right.
Looks better, right? Definitely accidentally shot some metal once towards one of the cameras, and the guy was like, "Oh god." Everybody was fine, but I made them all wear safety goggles and all that stuff, but they still freaked out because they didn't know what to do. But
Right.
anyways, so all of the locks on the X and Y are off. Of course, it's just loose, and
Mhm.
this is the ProtoTrack modified one, but I'm just hand jogging it left and right. Very low engagement. I don't even remember what my speed was. It didn't matter. I'm just making some chips and making it shiny for them. They don't care. I set it up in like 2 minutes. Just
Right.
slapped it in the on some parallels in the chuck. Wow, not chuck. Oh my god, the vice. Sorry. It's late,
No.
everybody. Anyways, and I'm just going along cool. And honestly, we actually didn't started the real filming yet. I was like, oh, you guys want to see what this looks like? The lights are off in the shop and it's got like just the mill light, and then they have some lights on me. You just want to see what like so you can get your shutter speeds and all that stuff, right? Do. I start doing it, and I had done some before they got there to make sure, okay, I'm happy. And then I pulled it away, and I'm moving the y-axis, the long axis, right? And then I move back, and then I go forward, and all of a sudden I can't move it anymore. And I'm like, well, that's weird. I'm like, and it felt very much like, but I'm also like, I knew I first checked all the locks. I'm like, they're all loose. I hit them, they all swing. Okay, they're loose. And I'm like, this is weird, right? And I like look around. I'm like, I don't see anything jamming anything, right? And like at first I thought, is this the ProtoTrack? Because like when you engage like power jog or anything on the ProtoTrack, it locks up all the motors and it feels like you can't move it. Obviously, it's engaging the motors, right? So I'm just like, okay, it's not that. I reset the ProtoTrack. It's not that. Okay, fine. I move it, and then all of a sudden I hear clink, and I look on the ground. I find a thing that's about the size of a marble. It's a piece of cast steel that is
Oh
part of the
no.
lock on the way.
Oh no.
And I almost broke down in tears on camera. And I locked and togged out that thing. I fake milled in front of them, didn't actually mill anything till we could finish the shot. And then I locked and tagged that thing out, and I need to actually find someone to come out and look at it. Because I imagine there's enough lock left along the Y that it's fine to use. It's just the very edge of it. Like I said, it's the size of a marble. But I'm like, why did that happen? I don't know. I didn't do anything wrong. I wasn't being crazy. And I had used this like 2 weeks earlier, like a week earlier, and no one else had used it. And everything was fine. And I'm like, what? And I hadn't like pulled the whey oil in like a couple weeks, but I had moved it left and right. Didn't care. And I wasn't like, again, it wasn't driving anything hard or just a multi carbide face mill.
Right.
Not face, yeah, just for face milling. And it was like nothing crazy. And I just popped off. And
How
I'm like,
bizarre.
it was super bizarre. I'm like, what? And I was like, is this the end of my baby? Because this is
Oh
my favorite Bridgeport.
no.
Because this is the older of the two Bridgeports too. So it's got like the cast logo on the top. It's all cast, and it's just really. I actually was upset when we decided to convert it because I liked it in its real manual form. It was just, it's beautiful machine.
Oh yeah.
It's the old school, and everyone knows how hard they are to come by. A good one.
Yeah, they're all either in somebody's shop or clapped out on Craigslist, but there's very
Exactly.
few in between.
Right. And so I'm like, oh no. And then we have another one, but it's a little bit newer, so it's like when everything got cheaper looking, kind of
Mhm.
ones. So yeah, I gotta find someone. So I will take any and all suggestions for DC servicing people that service Bridgeports. So people from anyone that will service the DC Metro. I will
Well,
take answers.
yeah,
Anyone.
we'll put the word out if
Because
anybody knows.
I think I think our shop manager on the society side might know somebody, but I need to talk with him tomorrow because I haven't seen him yet. Break the news to him. But I know it was like, and of course, of all things to happen on camera, right? And obviously
Of course,
they
yeah.
won't use that footage, but like, still like, what's happening? And they're like, what happened? I'm like, I think I just lost a loved one. you know, to anyone that's ever like had the serious malfunction on a tool, it's like, is it okay? Will it ever breathe again? Will
Right.
it? The X works, the Z works, but what about the Y?
Oh
That's the most
no.
important axis.
Oh,
I know, and
that's
that's
so
the thing I
rough.
wanted to circle back to was like clink, and I was like, but what? How? Why? I don't understand. And
That's
all I could think
so
of was
weird.
like a fatigue failure, and then something decided to catch,
That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
like fatigue embrittlement from us probably beating it up over the years because that's what we do.
Well, and it's what, probably 50 years old,
Oh
60 years
yeah,
old at this point. So,
and of course it's not like you're like I'm gonna go buy a new way.
right.
Said
Yeah.
nobody.
Well, I'll keep my fingers crossed. And if any
Uh,
listener knows, please reach out to
yeah,
Tom,
if you know any
for
East Coast, I'm sure it's someone that'll have to like come down from like Pennsylvania or up from deep Virginia. That's usually what it feels like. No one's just like, yeah, I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I'll service you in DC. No, no.
right.
They're probably in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
That's
That's probably a fair assessment.
yeah, that's where they
But,
are.
well, that does now bring me to the last question I ask every guest, which is what did you research this week? And it can be anything under the sun, just what has been piquing your interest.
Sure. So, not piquing my interest. Well, my piquing my interest is what can I buy new this year? Uh, Mark Forge or CNC Plasma. But this is fun. ITAR restrictions on night vision devices and thermal imagers.
Oh, interesting.
ITAR, for those that don't know, what that means is International Trade and Arms Regulations or restrictions, one of the two. And the U.S. is very keen on not letting our night vision assets out of the country or into enemy hands for obvious reasons. Keep our warfighters strong.
Mm-hmm.
But I gotta get this person that needs to shoot hyenas in February, and the person's passing through the states soon, so I want to give it to them before they go back to Germany, even though they're a German American citizen, just so we can avoid customs issues with payments for when you do shipping.
Right.
But we have to walk a fine line and make sure we don't hit any export control issues. And our security advisor at Nat Geo, I talked to him today. He's like, "What, Tom? Are you?" Called him. He was like, "Hey, can you talk about this?" Because he used to work in U.S. embassies around the world, like Baghdad and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "So, ITAR, are you getting into the international arms trade industry, Tom?" And I was like, I might just be,
Yeah, apparently.
because like this is like a military scope, and this is a military thermal imager, not like military grade, but like they look military, right?
Right. All right.
Like this looks kind of angry and green, so that
I
they
wonder
can
if you
find.
could buy
Yeah.
one from like China and then ship it to Germany or something and
I
then
don't
avoid
know.
that whole.
I think we got a pass for the night vision. I don't know about the FLIR thermal imager.
Oh,
And for those that
interesting.
know FLIR Imager, my employee had a great line today that made me laugh really hard. For anyone younger out there who remembers that song with apple bottom jeans, boots with the fur. So
Uh
now it's boots with the FLIR. And every time we say FLIR camera, we're like, it's boots with the FLIR. Got to
Oh
ship
my
boots with the
god.
FLIR to her. I know it's so things get weird in the basement at Nat Geo.
That's fantastic. But yeah, no, I'm sure many of my listeners are very familiar with ITAR and EAR
Oh
because
my
we
god!
all,
Yeah, a lot of the top machining work happens with defense stuff, of course.
Yep. Well, and
Um,
some of it you're like, how is this ITAR? Like it's a bracket, but it's because the assembly falls under ITAR and
of
like,
course.
yeah. So
I-
it's very interesting to see where those,
Uh-huh.
things pop up. You're like, oh, great. Okay.
So I actually have an interesting question for you. If we have any time left, is that okay? Or if we want to bounce?
I'm totally open.
Your question is one of the sexiest pieces of machine tools I've ever seen on the YouTubes is the DMG Mori LaserTech 3D 65 or something like that. And I'm
Uh-huh.
like, what is this Tony Stark insanity?
So that is the kind of new wave of machine tool.
Yeah.
DMG
Additive.
makes some.
Yeah, it's so cool.
There's a few other companies that make them. I saw a few of them at IMTS. 2018 was the last one that I went to. Well, that's the last one anybody went to. But yeah, they can deposit, with a laser and then machine them, and it's insane.
I know. I was like, wait, you just built it all in the same machine? Went from powder to what? How?
Oh yeah, internal cooling channels, whatever you
Everything.
want. Yeah,
It's so freaking amazing. And now I've listened to a couple of your episodes, and everyone's talking Kern, and I'd seen Kern stuff online, and I'm like, did you just say you made a perfect mirror? What? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he made it for fun too. He made it to show off to Fanic. Like
I was like, what? You're insane, man. And that's why I was like, I can't go on this podcast. I don't even know my feeds and speeds.
No.
So
this
really,
is just to nerd out about making
Yeah,
cool
and
shit,
I
which
will
you definitely
I will
do.
give a thing to your listeners if you want to cut this in. Is this a job I almost got out of college? So for those that don't know where Lehigh University is, it's where Bethlehem Steel used to be in that same town.
Oh,
Bethlehem
really?
Steel was the largest steel manufacturer in the U.S. and the world for a long time. Like Beth Steel in Pennsylvania, literally the Golden Gate Bridge came out of it. Like almost all of our cannons for World War II, like 50% New York skyline, most of the American Railroad. You go walk out to a railroad piece of railroad track somewhere in the U.S. Bet you might say Beth Steel on the side, right? They died because they didn't want to innovate after World War II because they're a bunch of idiots. That's their downfall. Now it's a casino. But one of the last remaining assets left next to it is Lehigh Heavy Forge, and it is a cool friggin' place. Lehigh Heavy Forge is one of the three largest open face forging facilities on the planet. And
Really?
I like to think of these places like this as an apex manufacturer. Like without this, these places, humanity doesn't exist because they make the support the mills, like the rolling mills for steel mills. So if we don't make steel, we don't exist as a species in our
Right.
modern era, right? Like so if we don't have machine tools and machines big enough to make these parts, you don't exist because then nothing else exists because we can't make the steel to even make your machine tools, your baby machine tools. So they're a small part there is 30 tons. They have a 300-ton rated overhead gantry crane, and it went over us when I was on tour for the interview. This was years ago, and it sounded like a railroad, like just a freight train going over my head. Their vertical milling machines, you have to use a gantry crane to load the end mills.
Oh
I
my
know, like we're talking
goodness.
something like an end mill, like the size of your head. Like a ball mill is like the size of your head. Like I shook the hand of a lathe operator there. Kid you not, the dude was missing two fingers.
Oh
And the
no.
guy handed me a chip, and the chip probably weighed 5 ounces.
Oh my goodness.
And that's a
I want
chip,
to
a
see
single.
that.
Yeah, it's just like, and so the reason that you brought this up is because they also ITAR, right? They make all of the enclosures for our nuclear reactors for our subs and ships for our navy.
Oh, really?
So they make those big ass pieces of steel, huge, and those remember those also have to be made of very specialized steels because you have nuclear embrittlement and all that
Right.
stuff and all that crazy stuff that happens. So like I remember I saw these parts and a lot of them were tarped over, of course, but just the hugest like those huge rotary tables that you can like
Hmm.
spin a house on. Like they have those, and I
Oh
went
my
there, and
goodness.
me and my like best buddy from college almost got jobs there. Like he was supposed to go. I don't know why they fell through, but he was supposed to go to like the side of the plant with all the forging because he was more into like metallurgy, and
Hmm.
I was gonna go more into like the machining, like the lathes and the machine tools, and like we would do a lot of cam work for those guys, like cam junkies and like CAD junkies for a while as young engineers fresh out of
Right.
school.
Right.
Um, and that would be cool. I mean, and there's not a lot of information on there for people to look up, but just dig into the ultra heavy equipment in the world, and it's amazing. Like some of our most strategic assets as a country are actually our hydraulic presses. Most people don't
Really?
know this because if the bigger your press is, the bigger single sheets of aluminum and titanium you can form for your airframes, for your airplanes.
Oh, interesting.
hmm And so there's some push in government to start up these programs to develop new ones because China and Russia are catching up again because we did all these during the Cold War. So they don't look as cool as an open face, with all the fire and brimstone, but they're actually much much stronger, like many millions of tons of pounds, like just stupendous forces. It's like imagine the things you see at the Ford factory stamping out the parts, right? But
Right.
now it's just on a different scale. It's just different. And that's cool about that part of the country is Lehigh had a lot of things because they were associated with Beth Steel a lot. So we
Hmm.
have the second strongest universal test machine in the world. Do you know what those are? Universal test machines?
I think so.
Tension and compression machines. They break
Yeah. Yeah.
samples. So
Yeah.
usually it's like a desktop thing. They have one at Lehigh that does 5 million pounds in tension or compression.
5 million.
Million. They have a 5 and a 20 ton crane to load parts. It was built in the 60s or 50s. It's I think 6 stories tall. It uses lead screws that are probably let's see 2 to 3 feet in diameter, two of them, to drive the unit.
Oh my
It's the
goodness.
second largest in the world. The largest is at the National Institute of Standards and Technology in Maryland, but that's a horizontal one, I think. So this one's just really amazing because it's vertical. I mean, it's just you go into the lab and you're like, excuse me, like you can actually tear bridge cables there, like a giant bridge cable you would see for like suspension bridge. They can tear that, or a giant I-beam, you can buckle it.
I can't imagine the sound that those things
I have
make.
no idea. I never was in there when they ran it, but I agree. But what's really cool that I suggest people look up because it's a hilarious photo. Look up Lehigh University Universal Test Machine online, and there's these old archive photos of when they like commissioned it, right? And to like show how precise this new modern marvel of engineering was, and that's my old timey engineering voice. They incubated chicken eggs, and then they put one on like a pedestal, and they brought down the bottom of the machine to crack it open, and like they're like, look at that, it's a gentle giant. Look how precise it is, and you're like, wow, what are like 1950s things to do? You're like, yeah, let's just risk the chicken. Like, maybe
Yeah.
we'll squish it. I don't know. It's precise. It's fine. And they
I'm
did
looking
it.
at it right now. Fritzy, they called
Fritzy,
the
yes, because
chicken.
that's right. It was Fritz Laboratory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they still have Fritzy's wishbone
yeah.
on display
And they
there.
like casted it in like aluminum or something. It's
Yeah.
so morbid and weird, but like they really did that, and it's just like, wow, what a ballsy way to show how awesome and precise your monstrous machine is by cracking open a live chicken egg.
Yeah. They did it to show the wide range of force
Yes,
from,
that's it.
20 to 40 pounds up to 5 million pounds.
Yeah, 20 to 40 pounds. Oh, yeah, you're just like, wow, okay. Oh, yeah, sure. We'll use that. We could flick it with our finger, but instead, we'll use this thing and maybe crush the chicken.
That may be the best example of overkill I think I've ever seen.
I know, it's outstanding. And I'm sure Lehigh doesn't really like to talk about it because it's a bit weird, but I think it's amazing.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
It's
And I'll definitely post a picture on the with the show notes of this giant Baldwin Universal Test
That's
Machine.
right.
Like
It was a Baldwin, yeah. And I find equipment like that outstanding. Just to think about, there had to been machinery invented to make that machine.
right.
Like they're like, well, how do we turn? How do you turn those lead screws? How do you do that?
Yeah.
Those are
That's
like an Acme style screw, right? A lead screw. How do you turn that when it's that big and that long? I do not actually know how you do that.
I don't know. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, that's so far out of my world. I make tiny stuff that fits in like a foot by foot by foot cube. So
That's why you have
um
that Speedy Gonzalez machine, the brother, right?
exactly. Yeah. I definitely am working on an order of magnitude smaller parts than that.
I
My
own a brother
goodness.
too.
A printer?
A label maker. Oh yeah. It's a good one though, mind you. It's a great one. It's got the detachable keyboard. It's the Rolls Royce.
Oh,
So,
oh
I
wow.
mean, you watch out. I'm going to take your job soon enough
Yep.
with my label maker. And
Oh my goodness. Well, I'll definitely include this in the show notes
I
because
just
it's
think
super
I think
cool.
that's a hoot. And I think your community would get a kick out of it.
Oh, totally.
Because
Yeah.
I don't have many interesting toys to show up, but I do. I have knowledge of interesting toys.
That's yeah, for sure. I'm shocked. And
The
there's
other
a
mega machinery that most people don't know about, that there is a lot of information about out there, is the U.S. Navy NAVSEA Carter Rock, Maryland test facilities. They are the best and largest model boat test facilities on Earth. So when we design a ship, we make a scale model. And when we say scale model, we mean like the size of a car, right? Because it's
okay.
scale relative to a huge warship, right? So they originally tried to build it in the Navy Yard, but then it kind of smushed because it's on marshes. So this is on bedrock, right near the Potomac River, just outside of DC. And they can tow model ships through water at up to 60 knots. And the rails curve with the curvature of the Earth, actually.
Really?
Yeah, you can look it up on Google Maps from satellite and be like, that whole building is a test tank. And then
That's
they also have a
bananas.
turning tank that can turn at 60 knots. Yeah, and they
Really?
have signs around it. If you ever get, you can go on a public tour sometimes there. And they arrange them sometimes, like no cell phones allowed kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And they have these signs around the outside of the turning tank that says, "Do not place anything on the track." And because some jerk put like a penny on there, right? And they're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this." And then you throw the alignment off on this multi-million-dollar like Soviet era machine. And then they also have another building that is a 2D wave basin with a gantry crane that can pull things through it, and then they can do kinematic studies. And so imagine like a wave pool, right? Like at Six Flags or something, but it's in two directions, and then also science mode.
Wow.
They have a lot of huge gantry routers there and stuff like that for making huge foam and wood models. Yeah,
That's so cool.
it's a cool place.
I'm gonna have to go and make a trip out to
Yeah,
tour all these places.
it's
It's
a
pretty
really, if you
amazing.
can get, I think the coolest places in the world to see are like the military installations when you can get on them, and then also like NASA facilities, because I mean NASA facilities, right? I've
Yeah,
been
I
to a few
mean,
of them, and
it's NASA.
you're just like, that's the crawler. Like if anyone's been down to Kennedy, you're like, the crawler is the coolest thing. Just
I,
carry a Saturn V, whatever.
right.
And
Yeah.
no big deal.
Well, and I mean, that's stuff like that's never gonna be needed again. You see like what's happening in space exploration now, and it's
Dude,
like
not until
it's.
the zombies, man. And then we'll just cruise across Florida on that thing.
There you go. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, Tom, I really appreciate you taking
Yeah,
the
of
time.
course.
It was really good to.
It's been a pleasure.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks to everyone on the Patreon. No new ones this week, but thanks everyone. It lets me schedule and organize interviews like this and get to talk to super cool people like Tom. And thanks everyone for listening. I'll be back next week.